the last thing that we say in Salah? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallayta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim. Did any of you ever think that we remember Ibrahim that often? More than Sayyidina Dawood, more than Sayyidina Sulaiman, more than Musa, more than Isa, more than any other prophet? Extremely significant. And by the way, our Salah is not complete, is not accepted unless we say this Salah that we call As-Salah Al-Ibrahimiyya, right? As-Salah Al-Ibrahimiyya in an hour tashahhud. Which brings me to my next quick question. This is just a quick reminder. When we do our Salah, and I'm saying this because I found out that most of the adults, as well as the youth, don't know this fact. There are certain pillars in our Salah, this is just a side note. Certain pillars of our Salah that if we don't do, our Salah is not accepted. One of them is As-Salah Al-Ibrahimiyya. If you don't say at the end of your Salah, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallayta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim, our Salah is void. Did you know that? So sujood al-sahw will not be sufficient. Will not be sufficient. So there are 13 other pillars of Salah that are necessary. And I think it's important to mention those, although this is not my subject for today, but I thought that I would throw it in. So how many of you can tell me the other pillars of Salah that must have actions in Salah? Very quickly, I know you know them, but I want to emphasize that they are pillars. They're not optional. Okay? So let's start from the beginning and down to sujood. From the beginning.
Surah Fatiha?
Before Fatiha. Hold on to Surah Fatiha. Before Fatiha. I'm sorry? Sana is a sunnah. When you say Subhanak Allahumma bihamdik, Allahu Akbar, the takbir al-ihram, that's one. That's a rukun. It's a pillar of Salah. What else?
Your niyyah?
I'm sorry? Your niyyah, your intention. It's very important. So for example, if I'm chasing Malik at home and he wants to run away from me, so he said, how many of you have done that when you were younger? Right? Yeah, Baba cannot touch me, I'm in Salah. His niyyah was not to do Salah. So there has to be niyyah. So intention, Allahu Akbar, takbir al-ihram, what else? There's one actually before these two that most people miss. I'm sorry?
Wudu?
No, wudu is before Salah. Wudu is something and Salah is something. What is another thing?
Your dress up?
That's something else. That's before Salah. That's a requirement for Salah. But facing the Qibla is also before Salah.
Before the niyyah?
Before the niyyah.
I don't know.
Standing up.
You don't have to stand up.
Actually you do.
No, you
When
don't.
it comes, if it's a fard, you have to stand up. If it's a sunnah, you can sit down. So you see people when they're done with their fard, they pray their 2 rak'ah sunnah while sitting down. This is fine for sunnah. But for fard, you have to stand up. It's not optional. So stand up, your niyyah, your takbirah, what else?
Surah Fatiha.
Surah Al-Fatiha is a rukun. It's a rukun, it's a pillar. If you don't say Surah Al-Fatiha, that whole rak'ah is void. What else? The surah after Fatiha is optional. You don't have to read anything after Fatiha.
Even in fard?
I'm sorry?
Even in fard?
Even in fard. Fatiha is rukun and that's it. Only Fatiha. What else? What's the fifth rukun? Ruku'. That's a rukun. You cannot miss ruku'. What else? Number 6. Standing up after ruku' is a rukun. The 7th one is one that most people miss. Al-i'tidalu qa'iman. You have to stand up still. Your whole body have to come to a still state. You have to stand up. Some people, they come up and then immediately go down. You have to stand still. Otherwise that rak'ah doesn't count. Next.
Sujood.
Sujood. Next.
You sit back up.
Sit back up from sujood. And the 11th one is at-tuma'nina. You have to sit down still. You have to sit down. You have to come to a still state. Okay, what else? Are we at 11?
And
As-salam, but then before it? At-tashahhud al-akhir. Only at-tashahhud al-akhir is a rukun. And then after that? As-salam. As-salam. And then there was another one, a 14th one. Oh, The 14th one is the sequencing, at-tartib. It's a rukun. You cannot do sujood before ruku', right? You cannot. You cannot do ruku' and then get up and say al-Fatiha. So the sequence is a rukun. It's a pillar of salah. Okay, so this is a reminder. Anything beyond that is an addition to your salah. Is a plus, is something nice to have, is rewarded. Okay?
I just got down 11 here.
11? After inshallah this. So let's count them. So standing up, the niyyah, takbiratul ihram, al-Fatiha, ruku', standing up from ruku', bringing your body to a still state after ruku', and then sujood, getting up after sujood, at-tuma'nina, which is settling after you sit down, and then as-salatul ibrahimiyya, right? And then as-salam, that's 12, and then the sequence, which is a tartib, and then a 14th one. We owe you one. I forgot. Fine. So moving on with Ibrahim alayhi salam. So the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam is a story that fits all ages and that has lessons for all age levels. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, if we were to look down at the different stages that he lived through, we can look at it in three different eras or periods of his life. The first one is when he was young. When Ibrahim alayhi salam was young as 16, he went through some experiences with his people. Alright, so for those of you who think, visually, think of it as three different areas. The first area or era or phase in his life is when he was with his people. So in this era is too long, right, for a human being, phase. In this phase of his life, he had the encounter with his father, which is documented in the Quran. He had the encounter with his people, and then he ended up breaking the idols, which inshallah I will drill down on this story. And then he was thrown in the fire, attempted to be killed, and then he left Iraq. So that's the first phase in his life. And he was, how old do you think he was?
16, 17?
16 years old. Who said 16? You get another piece of cake.
Okay.
So at age 16 he did all of this. Then the next phase of his life is when he started to go around, when he felt that his people did not welcome him, when he felt that he hit a dead end with his people. So he started to move around and travel around. That's when he met An-Namrud, the king of the time. And that's when he went or traveled to Syria. And that's when he saw the people who used to worship the stars. How many of you know the story of Ibrahim and the people who worship the stars? When you saw the planet and he said, "This is my God." And then he saw the moon. He said, "Oh no, this is my God," because that God had disappeared. And then when the moon disappeared, he said, "The sun now is my God." Remember the story? So this has happened in Syria. And then when he hit the dead end again, he went to Egypt, where the king of the land tried to kidnap his own wife, Sarah, from him. And then he went back to Palestine, where he lived with his wife and children. So that's the second phase of the life of Ibrahim. The last phase of the life of Ibrahim is when the story of taking his wife and son to Mecca, and then building Al-Kaaba, and then the slaughter or the attempt to slaughter Ismail alayhi salam. So this is the third phase of the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So this is a very high level overview of the stories that Allah Azza wa Jal have told us about Ibrahim. 73 times in the Quran, in 25 different surahs. So from very high level, at age 16, he had a lot going on in his life. And then the migration between one city or country to another. And then lastly, his story with Hajar and Ismail, which we remember every year in the season of Hajj. Alright? Now the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, as Allah Azza wa Jal tells us, is a perfect story. Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ. Allah Azza wa Jal has tested Ibrahim alayhi salam throughout his life And Ibrahim alayhi salam had perfected the answers to every test. Allah Azza wa Jal says, فَأَتَمَّهُنْ. He had perfected every test that Allah Azza wa Jal has thrown at him. Alright? So when you have a perfect answer, when you have a study guide, that would be a perfect role model for us to follow. Right? When you're about to take a test, they give you a study guide, don't they? Study guide. Some of us study, some of us don't study from the study guide. But when you have a study guide, you can't go wrong. That's what you need. So Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling us that Ibrahim alayhi salam is a perfect role model, a perfect study guide for us to follow. And that's what Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the Quran, قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا. Allah Azza wa Jalla told Ibrahim that, Ya Ibrahim, I will make you an imam for people to follow. Not only in salah, but to follow throughout their lives. Right? So when you go and do umrah or do hajj, after you're done with tawaf, what do you do? Before that?
You stand behind his footprint.
Thank you very much. And that place is called? Maqamu Ibrahim. Maqamu Ibrahim is where you can see his footsteps. And so until the end of time, we have to stand behind Maqam Ibrahim and think that Ibrahim is an imam. And we remember him in every salah, because Ibrahim alayhi salam had perfected every aspect of his life. Now, Ibrahim alayhi salam, as the seerah, as the history says, what was the name of the father of Ibrahim? Anyone? Azar. What does Azar mean? Not Hajar, Azar. I don't know actually. No, I think Azar means the one who used to help others. Now the father of Ibrahim alayhi salam, you get a piece of cake. So Azar alayhi salam and Ibrahim alayhi salam was the son of Azar. Now Azar was the builder of idols. He was the manufacturer of idols in the town. And the lesson learned that I see in this situation is that Ibrahim alayhi salam had lived in the worst kind of environment ever. Are you guys listening? Are you awake? Are you awake? Ibrahim alayhi salam lived in the worst environment. I'm saying this because some of the youth, they look at their parents and they say, Baba, Mama, you don't know what we go through. You don't understand. You've never been to a public school. You don't understand what we go through on a daily basis in high school. You don't know how tough it is to be a Muslim or a Muslimah. You don't know. That's what we tell our parents. But no one had a tougher, worse situation than Ibrahim alayhi salam. He lived in the house of the manufacturer of idols in town. But yet, historians say that Ibrahim alayhi salam has never ever turned towards an idol, a sanam. Never ever. But it's also interesting to know, you probably did not know this fact, Malik. Ibrahim alayhi salam used to go around and try to sell the small statues. Did you know that?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Did you know that? Mm-hmm. Ibrahim alayhi salam used to try to sell idols. Did you know that? But how come? You know what he used to say? Go ahead.
He used to say, who wants to buy these idols that don't hear or see?
He used to go around and say, who would like to buy this thing that cannot hear or see anything? And take it as a god. It's an insult. He's really not trying to sell, but he's trying to highlight the fact that these idols are useless. And historians say that Ibrahim a.s. was only 10 years old when he did that. Only 10 years old.
When he started questioning if the sun is my God or the moon is my God, then how come before that he was preaching Tawheed to his dad?
Very good question. Excellent question. Ibrahim a.s., as the young lady said about critical thinker, was you, right? Ibrahim a.s., you can learn from him many, many skills. One of them is critical thinking. One of them is rational or reasoning. One of them is is planning for a goal, he used to plan very well. So this technique that he used actually